Well, hope you're doing great. It's the Cybersecurity Whisper for the week of August 25th. Start off with some good news. We've covered this to some degree, but it was kind of confusing. Microsoft and now their secure computing initiative, is now mandating MFA for all Azure users, and this has been kind of confusing. But apparently this is going to start in October of this year in 2024. That Microsoft's going to require multifactor authentication for all customers to sign in to the Azure portal, the Entra Admin Center, and the Intune Admin Center. Again, this starts in October. And the company began to send out 60-day notices to all, kind of Entra admins impacted by the change this past week. And they said it's going to review requests from customers that have complex environments or technical burdens or barriers that would prevent them from implementing mandatory MFA. I'm not sure what that could possibly be. They're going to phase in MFA at sign-in for Azure command line, so CLI stuff, Azure PowerShell, Azure mobile app, and infrastructure as code in early 2025. So again, MFA is not the silver bullet, but it certainly makes it much harder for the bad guys. And so MFA everywhere should be kind of the standard. And so kudos to Microsoft for starting to enforce this. Something that's interesting, as a result of continued attacks, companies aren't as resilient as they might think. And so a study this week showed, now I will tell you the study was by a vendor that deals with disaster and recovery software. But still, I think the concept is true. Companies have largely overestimated their cyber resilience capabilities and are mostly unable to maintain their own business recovery goals when confronted by ransomware or other malicious attacks. We kind of saw this with CrowdStrike, again, where folks were kind of ransomed and then told how to fix it. It still took some companies weeks or months to recover. Nearly 7 in 10 IT and security leaders said their organization paid a ransom in the last year, despite widespread internal policies to not pay ransoms. Almost 4 in 5 folks that responded to the survey said their company had a policy to not pay extortions, but yet they had to. Almost half of the companies said they need more than 6 days to recover their core business processes after an attack. And so if it's going to take that long where they can just pay the ransom and get it back supposedly within 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours, they're probably going to go with that. And so again, it goes back to your testing and your true disaster recovery and not just tabletops necessarily. CISA, again, this week, the Center for Infrastructure and Security, this agency, warned of active exploits hitting popular tool Jenkins. Now, if you're not familiar with Jenkins, it's an open source automation server that helps automate parts of the software dev process, primarily in the areas of building, testing, and deploying. So it's widely used for CI/CD, which is continuous integration, continuous delivery pipelines. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency warned federal agencies that threat groups are actively exploiting a critical vulnerability in Jenkins that was initially disclosed back in January, and they added it to their CVE, which is a whole other project right they're working on, known exploited vulnerabilities catalog on Monday. They said this ransomware, they saw an attack targeting Bron2 Technology Solutions, and that disrupted banks in India in late July after attackers exploited the Jenkins vulnerability. And so again, if you use Jenkins, you need to go out and actively patch your Jenkins servers. Let's see, the command line interface path traversal vulnerability has a CVSS score of 9.8, which is it's almost as high as you can get with on a scale of 1 to 10. It can be exploited by unauthorized or unauthenticated attackers reading arbitrary files and then achieving RCE, remote code execution. This is something we also been talking about with the Flipper Zero and other. There's hardware backdoors were recently discovered in Chinese keycards. Again, shouldn't be a big surprise, but a security researcher discovered a secret backdoor in RFID keycards manufactured by a Chinese company, a major Chinese company. And the backdoors allow threat actors to clone the smart cards within minutes and then access secure areas. Nowadays, when you've got the Flipper and you take it to different card, maybe hotel keys or government access building keys or something, then you've got to jailbreak your Flipper. You've got to put software on there that can kind of try to break the encryption on some of these secured smart cards, but not on these. They had a backdoor, and these again are the MyFair Classic chips, which are in almost every RFID card. The chips have been on the market since 1994, and they've been widely used for badges at hotels, banks, government buildings, factories, and many other places. And so the backdoor goes as far back as 2007, meaning that any cards distributed over the past 17 years can likely be cloned within seconds. And so, I mean, these cards have been considered insecure for a long time, but it was due to design errors and not a backdoor. And so these attackers would still have to kind of take minutes and physical resources to crack and dump the card's data in order to clone the access keys in the past, but not anymore. This backdoor puts these cards now into a whole new threat matrix. So again, if you've got these RFID cards, you're using them to secure areas, you need to validate that these cards, you may need to change cards or change reading companies, because again, when you reviewing your logs and it may show that standard authorized people are getting in, they may not be those standard, quote, authorized people like you thought. The big story that everyone's heard about, and I didn't want to talk about it first, was national public data, right? For some of you, you may not know I didn't know what national public data is. Apparently in the United States, we allow anyone that wants to just start a consumer data broker. And so this consumer data, so I'm thinking it's only the major, Experian, Equifax, and Union. That's not the case. This national public data was founded by a retired sheriff's deputy from Florida. And, so he goes and gets this, just like it says, publicly accessible data from multiple different sources, puts it in a database, and then sells it to others. In fact, it was used at a background service check called recordscheck.net. Well, it turns out, again, when you have these fly-by-night companies, and then they have third parties like we all depend on, one of the third parties, the recordchecks.net, was hosting an archive that included the usernames and the password for the site's administrator. And so up until this researcher even published this story, so they had contacted them, they ignored him. But when this story was published on August 19th, this file was just taken down that day, this zip file, this members.zip file, which had the initially assigned 6-character password and instructions on how to change it, which it was never changed. And so because of that, bad guys were able to download 3 billion, or 2.7, 2.9, almost 3 billion social security numbers. Now, granted, if you ask, the all authoritative ChatGPT, there are only 334 million residents currently in the United States or legal authorized, with social security numbers. And so if there were 2.7, 2.9 billion social security numbers, obviously many of those are deceased. But nonetheless, you can just say that everyone's social security number was breached in this. It's all for sale on the dark web. And so what you should do, again, we've been talking about this, you need to go out to Experian, TransUnion, Equifax, and freeze your credit. It's free. Go out and place freeze your credit. Therefore, no one can open loans or anything in your name, and it's free. And so that's the advice. And of course, phishing is going to, more targeted, accurate phishing is going to occur now, where they actually have the last 4 of your social in an email, trying to make it look more real. So you certainly need to continue your training and awareness with your team members, as that's only going to increase now. Not real good news here. This, look, there's this Southern Kentucky man who admitted to faking his death while attempting to avoid paying a little more than $100,000 in child support that he owed his ex-wife. And so, thankfully, he's now been convicted, caught, and is going to be spending more than 6 years in federal prison. He pled guilty to charges of computer fraud and identity theft, and it's one of the strangest hacking cases in the U.S. criminal justice system. According to court papers, this 39-year-old accessed the Hawaii state government's computer registry of dead people in early 2023, impersonated a medical certifier, and falsely certified that he had died as he sought to skimp on child support obligations to his former wife. And this resulted in him being registered as a deceased person, and of course in many government databases. I'm not sure he thought about that. And so then there were U.S. prosecutors in the U.S. Attorney's Office near to his home in Somerset, Kentucky. The Alive and Well Kip is his last name, digitally infiltrated other states' death registry system. Once you can do it once. And then as well as hotel chains booking platforms using credentials stolen from various medical workers and physicians. And then he sold access to these systems along with a database of private information, including, again, socials and other information to fellow cyber criminals on the dark web. And so he was caught, he was convicted, and very odd. But wait, there's more. There's two more interesting stories. You think, well, this cyber stuff really doesn't affect me. I'm in my house. I play my Xbox. I've got my iPhone. I got my job. I'm good. Well, unfortunately, there was a franchise that owned 23 Subway restaurants, had a little over 200 employees, that completely shut down this week. No warning. Employees showed up. The doors were locked. They're not going to get their paychecks. And it was, again, because the owner of the franchise had, they don't give specifics. It sounds like business email compromise. Nonetheless, she said her bank account was hacked, and because it was considered fraud, it's not covered under FDIC. She can't get any of her money back. She couldn't pay their bills. She couldn't order any food for the restaurants, and they completely closed down. And so, again, it does hit home. It does affect all of us. And finally, again, in the let's stick with odd stories for the week, a computer engineer was arrested this week and charged he hacked his own employer. You think maliciously? No, this was just, I think he wanted money. He demanded, so he was a current employee there. He was an engineer, and he ransomed his own company for $750,000. This is in New Jersey. He was employed at a U.S.-based industrial firm that provides services to various industries, electronics, biopharm, and food and beverage. And he was a core infrastructure engineer and served as the company's expert on virtual machines. And so he exploited his position at the company, which they call Victim 1 in court, so they're not naming the company. He created a secret virtual machine on his company's network, which allowed him, of course, to have this backdoor access. And on November of 25th of last year, employees at his company began receiving weird notifications, including password reset from the company's domain administrator account. And then later that day, his colleagues, managers, and company personnel, they all received an email from an external email address stating that the firm had been hacked. And according to the hacker emails, all the company's IT admins have been locked out of their accounts. They've had their backups deleted, and an additional 40 random servers would be shut down over the next 10 days if he didn't pay this ransom. He asked for, at the time, it was something about $700,000 in Bitcoin. And the law enforcement's identified him. They could tell he was the one that sent the ransom email. They searched his computer and his network and found unauthorized access to the company's admin account, and they saw it was carried out from a remote desktop, which turned out to be the hidden VM that he created between November 10th and November 25th of last year. And so it's very interesting how, thankfully they caught him, and you think about insider risk. How many of us are kind of planning for insider risk, whether it's malicious or, again, the guy just wanted more money. There's no indications he was being paid by other countries or anything. He just wanted more money. And so, you got to stay safe, stay cyber aware, like and subscribe, and send us your questions, and hope you have a fantastic week. Thanks.